to where all the Oriole fans or all people are kind of talking about is, all right, well, you're saying that we're not making moves for more offensive talent. Yep. Well, what are they going to do? Is Corbin Burnes coming back? Why aren't they paying Corbin Burnes? Is something else going to happen? Well, Ken Rosenthal on Foul Territory spoke on the options for Baltimore here. So we're going to play that clip for you guys, and we'll react and give you more insight after the video.
Are you looking at the Orioles as, okay, this pitcher's $150 million, that's out of their range, or is it years that you feel like, in your opinion, Mike Elias is afraid to go too many years for any starting pitcher?
First of all, I don't know what their range is under their new ownership. It's impossible to say. They have taken over and they haven't done anything big yet. They haven't shown any hesitation on certain players like Tyler O'Neill, but at the same time, they've not gone here. Now, maybe they'll never go to that level, and this is still a small market team by baseball's definition. It's still a team that probably shouldn't be spending $250 million on Corbin Burnes based on their revenues, unless the owner decides he wants to do a little Steve Cohen. So I don't expect them to do Burnes, and I don't know that Mike Elias would advise them doing Burnes as he tries to manage the payroll. But there are other ways to go. Look at Cease, for example. Last offseason, they traded for Corbin Burnes. They traded Joey Ortiz, who looks like he's going to be a really good player, and DL Hall, who still has a chance to be a good pitcher, as well as the 34th pick. They still have enough to take a similar shot at Cease. It's a one-year thing, just like it was with Burnes, but they have players that they're not going to be able to play in the major leagues. There's too many of them. Position prospects in particular. So I can see them going that route, and that would be okay. But as far as what the problem is with regard to the free agent market, I'm not exactly sure.
So right there, the conversation was about what the Orioles could do. And we've discussed this in length. And on our last video on Monday, Zach, you and I talked about how, it just feels like San Francisco is going to be the front runner, the amount of money. I don't see that the Orioles are going to spend that. People can be frustrated. I would still rather, if the Orioles are going to spend money long term, it's on their guys they're trying to keep, the Westbergs, the Gunners. Yeah. I think those are going to be very important. Cowser, I think that all those are going to be very, very important. Adley, man, I'm just naming off a lot. You want to keep a nucleus together. Corbin's not going to be cheap, and someone's going to overpay. The worry is Corbin's been so durable, but could anything happen at any point? And it still comes down, Zach. I'm not sold that Corbin wants to be in Baltimore. I want him to be in Baltimore. I hope he's in Baltimore. But there's nothing that's showing us right now that that's going to be the case. So the other option is trading for a guy. And the name that keeps coming up here is Dylan Cease, Zach.
Yeah.
And I think what Ken was saying, and I agree, Dylan Cease is going to cost you probably a little bit less than what you got for Corbin Burnes.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be willing to take on that deal? They think the Orioles should. I would definitely be interested in it. What say you?
Yeah, and, I like the whole the Orioles aren't spending money type thing. I do think it is through a trade, but we've seen them take on $18 million of Zach Eflin in a trade. We've seen them take on Eloy Jimenez contract in a trade. So I don't think this guy's being paid a lot, the Orioles aren't going to trade for him. I don't think that's an issue at all. I think we've kind of agreed from the jump that, hey, Dylan Cease or Luis Castillo are probably more realistic than a Corbin Burnes. A guy through a trade seems much more realistic than shelling out the $250-ish million that it's going to take to get a Corbin Burnes long term. So I think, hey, we've even talked about maybe some deals with a team like the Astros, but I do genuinely think that if there's going to be a move, hey, the Orioles are going for an ace, that's going to come in the trade market rather than the Orioles are out there, opening up the wallet in the free agency pool.
Yeah, I think that the trade just seems like it makes the most sense. I would consider it in some cases, Zach. I think Sean Manaea is still going to be in play. Like Walker Buehler would still be in play.
Would love Bueller.
And honestly, of all those guys, I would still, because of the team control and his contract, Luis Castillo just makes so much sense.
So much
sense. But it's going to depend on a few things here. And there's a few things that you got to factor in. What does Roki Sasaki do?
Mm-hmm.
If he goes to the Padres or Mariners, you're going to be more inclined to sell on a pitcher, especially to Seattle. And then the one now that continues to confuse me a little bit is the Houston Astros, because the report came out, Nolan Arenado used his right with his no trade clause. He waived the right. He used his no trade clause to completely end the deal that would have sent him to Houston, which makes you think, Zach, Houston doesn't seem like they're ready to concede or rebuild. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, another name that keeps being brought up was Framber Valdez. He's a guy that definitely seems like it would fit, really good player. But I think we're going about it this way. I think that some of these pitchers at one point are going to be moved. It seems more likely now that a guy like Dylan Cease going to be on a contract year. It makes sense. But the one thing, I guess, that if the Orioles were to trade for Cease, to finish that, I would really hope that if he pitches the way that you want him to, or you trade for him, that's a guy that you lock up in this case. So that's my thing. I don't want to see another Corbin Burnes situation where gets paid, he's going to go elsewhere. If Corbin doesn't resign, then you're doing the same exact thing again. I don't want to see that you're giving up prospects to not get a longer-term investment in what you are receiving.
And I like what Q brings up here, and you can only rent for so long. And that's why I think if you go get a Dylan Cease, you got to be committed to, hey, we want him for, even if it's not, hey, we're signing you a 6-year deal. Hey, you come here for the 1 year of your remaining contract, but we're going to extend you for 3 more years. We're going to extend you for 4 more years, because it does feel like, you do only have so many prospects. You can't, as much as the Orioles have felt like a factory for prospects over the past few years, you can't rely that, hey, every year we can go get the top arm available via trade because we have these prospects. You also want to keep the prospects, and you don't want to keep giving them up. You want these guys to help you with the team long-term, especially while they're cheaper on cheaper deals. So I agree. I think if you go get a Dylan Cease, I think that makes the most sense, and then you try to make a deal happen past that. I think he has more, I guess he'd be more likely to re-sign here than a guy like Corbin Burnes, where he felt like all along he was going to go back to the West Coast, really from the